Oh, I'm a bit close. Right, hello. Here I am back at home, having had my 2019 Fringe now done, dusted all over, and reflecting as I normally do at the end of my period of time out at the Fringe with what has happened and what I've seen and what's been there. 53 shows, 32 venues over a 6 day kind of concentrated period of time going for full days, going for 1 half day with my daughter. Has been a It's been a fascinating thing. 2019, has it been a vintage year? Don't know if I've ever had a vintage year at the Fringe. Don't know if I've had the best, but certainly this year, a number of the highlights, a number of the things that I found particularly interesting was when I started the first day. I went to see Putney High School and Sherlock Holmes mystery that they brought up. A really good, I felt, example of good youth theatre, well directed, well put together, early morning. And the early morning slots is something I kept coming back to every time I put an end of day vlog up, that it's a difficult time. And I was absolutely delighted to see that in this occasion at the Space on the Mile that they had got it, I thought, quite right. Then I went to something I thought was very worthy, which was White Girls, which was all about being in the refugee camps in France. And I see that it's got quite a few plaudits, quite a few things that have come their way, which has been nice to see. I went from there to see a real play. And that's one of the things that I find that the Fringe doesn't always do particularly well, which is something that has substance, is a drama, has a good 2 hours in it somewhere. Devil of Choice, this one was cut down for the Fringe. But you certainly get a feeling that the characters were able to breathe and develop, and there was some quality of writing behind it. Of course, one of the things that I'm very interested in is sport, and football and boxing being the two things that I write most about. So there was a play called The Boxer, which I didn't go to see, but I did go and see the beautiful game out at the Zoo Playground, a new venue, which, again, one of the surprising things about Edinburgh is every so often it refines, rediscovers, or finds for the first time new buildings that it can then adapt and develop into theatre spaces. And Zoo Playground is a very, in my opinion, worthy addition. 3 spaces that appear to be great, and I spent quite a bit of time, 2 to 3 hours there with 3 shows, which were of varying, for my taste, quality. Probably the beautiful game was in the middle, and the top was the one which was about the two. I'll come back to that and I'll remember it because it's important that I do remember it. It was about the 2 people out on a night out meeting for the first time. Anything with a pulse, that's it. And again, another worthy one. Another young company came after that. Being Scottish, living in Scotland, and with Scottish theatre out there in a kind of quandary at the moment, having to deal with the post-independence referendum and looking at Brexit in a way in which Scotland doesn't want to leave, but is going to be forced to leave because it's part of the United Kingdom, can be an interesting place to be. Scottish theatre doesn't always grasp that very, very well, that political thing, since the demise of things like Wildcat in 784. But here we got Kevin P. Gilday with Suffering from Scottishness at Assembly Rocks. And I really love Kevin P. Gilday's work. I don't think he has quite grasped the performance aspect in using character, and I thought that the character that he had in this was far weaker than he himself, which is what I wrote in my review. I then was off to venue 13, one of my favourite venues, and going to venues is quite a difficult thing for me because I love some of them, and I see some work in there that's just the same kind of variable quality as anybody else, but the ambience of it, and venue 13 has always been one I've really loved to go, and I only went once. I didn't get to another of my favourite venues, which is Greenside at Royal Terrace, which is a way out, and I think I'd already mentioned I didn't get beyond Princess Street this year, which is a real loss, I think, for the whole kind of experience. Then I get involved, and have got involved, in helping hand in Splintered, being a helping hand with Splintered and the people who are from Jamaica. I have put in who the director and the writer is because she's applying for a director's visa to stay and work in the United Kingdom, and this would help. Bit like White Girls during the day, it's a very worthy cause, very much about something that's prescient and real just now. So theatre being able to look at LGBT issues in the Caribbean, as Splintered was all about. but also being somebody who can have a little bit of a social conscience and help out, I thought was very worthy and not something I expected. It was also a day in which I realised that I wasn't the target audience for some things, and for the first time. And it was Lucy McCormick. And it's a piece of theatre that I really did struggle with. But it's winning 4-star reviews all over the joint. And it's yet another example of just how wonderful and great this woman is. Don't get it. But time will tell whether they're right and I'm right. I don't know. Then I had the problem with the car and getting cash in order to liberate it from the car park. And car parks became a theme this year for me. Bus parks, car parks, the whole kind of lot. But by day 2, I was off to the power of a roundabout, or the power of roundabout brought by Payne's Plough into Summerhall. And I saw a musical in the morning of day 2, which was a Scottish musical and was absolutely fantastic. And it was that, I think, that began to turn my time round on the Fringe into something that was a little better than the kind of average that I'd seen up to that point. Although I'd seen some good stuff, it had never really gripped me in that way. So I then found myself looking and watching something that had been part 2. John McCann, who's currently resident in Dundee but originally from Northern Ireland. Back duped is what he did last year about the DUP. This year he has developed it further. And I met him, which was lovely to do, because I had a wee story about Geoffrey Donaldson, Sir Geoffrey Donaldson, the DUP politician. And we managed to catch up and spend 5 minutes. And that connection with artists this year has also been very good. I've managed to have some time with Francesca Bertolini, who did Father, with the Ouija Boys, Ouija Think of That, who were at the space at Nidri Street. And that has been a kind of highlight, getting that ability to talk directly to actors and those who are creatives puts you back in touch with the process, which I think is very important. Something that Fringe Review have really dedicated themselves to this year. Well over 50, 60, must be about 70 reviews, audio interviews rather, on the website. Youth theatre came part of it, and it was interesting. There was one youth theatre I went to see who had not one, not two, but 3 people who seemed to have been responsible for their publicity, and they seemed to hammer it very hard. Good wee piece, really liked it. Very developmental, I'm sure. Then Lip Sync. What can I say? It just blew me away. It was an outstanding piece of theatre, and it was something that was very theatrical and very, very real. If I'm talking about people in the Caribbean, then talking about people in Cumbernauld is just as worthy, because they are Kirsty Young and they've won a Fringe First for it, fully deserved. A woman who has cystic fibrosis and has turned 30. And the average age that people lose their life who have got cystic fibrosis is mid-30s. So it was a real privilege and an honour. But also I think what was interesting about it was that I wanted to know more. I wanted to see more. She brought me into a place and I sat and I watched and I thought, I'd love to know what happens next. And I wrote that in the review. And I went from there to see that from somebody who hadn't done it before to somebody who's done it for so long, with The Letter at Pleasance Dome, somebody who's performed this for decades. And it's a piece of physical comedy that was just brilliant. So there am I, now feeling really good about it, and I went to see something that did not get a review from me, and it's the only one. And I'm not going to mention who it is because we don't, but it's received a 5-star review from somewhere else. How'd you get round that? Well, that was an interesting part of this year as well, and I'll come back to that later on. A late night, Greenside in the Space, on my second day. And these are interesting as well, because very often young companies do tend to take up those spots, which means that what you get is you kind of get this worthiness. And some of the stuff that I saw, like in mental health, was really, really good to see it at the Fringe, but not necessarily dealt with in a theatrical manner. I thought that it had enough depth and resonance in order to make a huge impact. Then I had a problem with a flat battery in my car, so my car was not helping me out here. Day 3, took Keris, my daughter, and she was in charge of 1 out of the 3 on that day. I picked the other 2. Well, 1 I picked because PQA venues were fantastic, who were really, really good, and Alison Duguid at PQA was outstanding in terms of encouraging me to go and see things, and that's probably why I saw 2 or 3 there this year. But We went to a youth theatre one in the morning, which was made by PQA Stroud, created by person in charge of PQA Stroud, and it's the beginning of a number of little stories, little plays that she's doing, looking at diversity, which I thought was great. And the play itself and the performances, lovely kids, fantastic place for them. And I think that's one of the things I really like about the PQA at Riddlecourt, is the fact that they're bringing their own material, their own kids, and giving them that access to audiences. Then we went back to see something we'd seen 7 years ago, which was the I Hate Children children's show, except we went to the all-new and improved one. And Keris got up on stage, as she did 7 years ago, as her sister did, my other daughter, Neve, did 7 years ago, or one of my other daughters. There's 7 kids to go through. I only got 2 to the Fringe this year. And then we went to see a Scottish aerial performance called Heroes at the Cow in the Underbelly in Bristol Square, which was another one which I thought had a lot of merit. Day 4, I was off to Paradise in the Vaults and Paradise at the Gustings, but Paradise in the Vaults first in the morning, a strange morning where they didn't open up the box office till about 5 minutes before. And from there I went to see National Youth Theatre doing F Off. It was a day 3, which was about technology and the internet. I had a bit of a hiccup with a dance-based show that I really wanted to see. And then I went to see There She Is at PQA, and I'd seen There She Is last year, but it really suited this venue, whereas last year it was at Zoo Southside, and I don't think it really did suit it there. I saw a second Sherlock Holmes piece, which wasn't as good as the first, and it's an interesting one because I know the story of the demise of Sir Arthur Conan Doyle and his funeral, and then the seance afterwards, and that's what it was based on. So it was a good thing to see at the Fringe, but not necessarily as well developed and performed by a Scottish company as I'd hoped. And then my treat at the night was to go and see the Ouija Boys in Nae Bother. Now, this has not got a good review from another publication. It has got a very good review from me. I loved it. And I thought that taking the Lucy McCormick thing and it not being targeted at me, this was targeted not necessarily at me, but people round about me. And I thought it really hit the mark and I really enjoyed it. It's just a pity other people didn't quite see the joke, but hey ho. Day 5 was away to see Tiny People early in the morning, Solis Circus at Scottish Storytelling Centre. And another one where I thought the venue maybe was going to be a bit of a struggle. And it was. It could have done with being more in the round, more inclusive, more on the same level. But very practiced, very good piece of theatre, as I said. Then I went to see some young work at the zoo, which I thought was good. And again, there's a change. I'm sitting there going, this is good, this is really, really good. And others are giving it 1-star, 2-star reviews. Then my day just suddenly got brighter and improved. This was when I went to see Van Gogh at the Natural Food Cafe. I'm still blown away with it. I still think about an American actor playing a Dutch painter. Outstanding. Back to some Scottish stuff. Went to see If You're Feeling Sinister at Gilded Balloon TVIT. Not TVIT, Paterhouse, the new one. And then from there off to see improvisation. Lovely to see some improv at the Fringe. But again, it's not always completely improv. Bumper Blighton. And I would, people of a certain age who had ever read any Secret 7, Famous 5, Mallory Towers, any of that kind of stuff, this is stuff that's right up your street, and it really does work well. Then I went to see The Immersive Coma out at Summerhall. I'd seen Flight the year before. Much preferred this one. This one was a bit disconcerting. Drone, LGBT. Drone shared a publicist, a producer, with Lip Sync. So that's one of the reasons why I went to see that. Not just because I wanted to see it. It was an LGBT piece, transgender piece of theatre, and that was interesting because there are at least 50 plus transgender pieces at the Fringe this year, so it's taken a little bit of traction, and it's a bit of pride, which is very, very good, I think, for both LGBT and also for the Fringe and for the theatre community. Then I got a bit challenged. A Rock and Roll Suicide. Now, I have given it a really good review because I really loved it. Not just because I think the guy who performed it, who has ADHD, borderline personality disorder, and is on the spectrum, was a former punk band singer and musician, therefore not really that disciplined. In fact, brilliantly undisciplined, I felt. But others didn't like it. I think it's a motley crew, if you pardon the pun, and even if you don't, of anecdotes and look at me's rather than insight into the music business. I thought it was very insightful. Then I spent a late night at Greenside, and again, variable quality. Greenside and Space this year for me have provided some interesting challenge for me as a reviewer, which I've enjoyed. I do think that it's our responsibility, and I will no doubt at some point look at the list of all the ones who've got reviews and find that many of ours, or many of the ones that I've reviewed, have not been reviewed by anybody else. So I do think it is a massive responsibility, particularly early morning and late night, where there are young companies where that's all they can afford, and they're basically playing to their chums, their pals, and those other companies who are in the venue. So I think that it's quite important that they get some kind of response back. So delighted to do that. Though sometimes it can be a bit, I'm struggling a wee bit. It's midnight, I've seen 9 shows, I really need my bed. But I've never fallen asleep, they've always kept me going, which is great. Then I start my final day, day 6. Off to the breakfast plays at the Traverse, which I thought was fantastic. Findan Hertog doing his usual wonderful directorial best. And no bacon rolls. Ended up with vegetarian haggis. So in the morning I started there, and at night I ended up with a filthy doner kebab. So, in between, my scheduling difficulties, I get caught out trying to get from one venue to another because there was a problem in one finishing late and the other one starting on time. It's that point in the Fringe, normally you're cutting time off some of these performances. Now, when there's a delay or there's something, there's a blip, it can really muck things up. But I managed to see Daughterhood, which I thought was fantastic, at roundabout second time I'd been in there at Summer Hall. And also fitted in a PQA one and got to see 2 that day at PQA. The second one, a stand-up. It was a stand-up day for me, I think, and a stand-up kind of sketchco theme going on with this at a PQA, a couple. Sketch one, Little R&R, and the Age Fright 35 and Counting, which I thought was fantastic. I thought it was great, really made me laugh, maybe just hit me at the right time. Then went to see Gavin Lind at Sweetgrass Market, and that was an interesting hour. Another one, a gay comedian who's getting divorced, South African, living in Australia. What isn't bizarre? And that was the charm of it, and that was the greatness of it, although he has apparently upset and offended quite a few people. I think if you're going to be offended by Gav, then you're going to want to be offended by Gav. So that was nice. Having a gay son, some of the things were not uncomfortable, but I did find myself wondering if I would ever have this conversation with my son thereafter. As luck would have it, he was with me that day insofar as he got the lift there and took the lift back. He also went to see an LGBT thing which was called Sex Education, and it made the two of us have a very long conversation about gay sex and homosexuality and the whole rainbow, if you like, and spectrum of a discussion. So that was fantastic. So happy that. I also saw a really good play, A Fear and Loathing Actor in Dublin, which was done by an Irish group and had been asked to go and do it by the publicist, really kind of taken to the publicist in a sense. So I felt that I should go and see it, which I did. I'm really glad I did. A really good piece of theatre, interesting concept. Then off to see Brunch Club and the Gridiron down at Pleasance. That was another timetabling thing, overran and made me almost late for the next one. But we were locked in. So when I was trying to get out, and I obviously looked a bit grumpy, the person who was front of house, instead of going, "Excuse me, hold on a second, let me help you," it was a case of, "Don't do that. Right, I need out," and I apologised, because you do. But the end of the day was a piece of theatre that I thought was unbelievable. Boer at Pleasance Courtyard, the 53rd. I still am blown away by it. I think it was an outstanding performance of quite exceptional technical creativity and ability. And between that and lip sync, I think those are the two that stand head and shoulders above. The letter is probably a third. So out of 53, there are 3 that I went, oh, wow. Is that enough? It turns out to be about 6%. What do you think of that? Rock and Roll Suicide, those are other highlights. So as it builds in the numbers that I start to add on to it of things that I thought were excellent, must see and so on, then it suddenly begins to look a much better year from a distance. There was only one I didn't review, which is less than in previous years. There's normally maybe 1, 2. In fact, there's normally 2. So the standard has perhaps gone up. I don't know. But what I do know is over 6 days and 53 shows, and not seeing a huge number of venues, not getting to just the Tonic, not getting to the Newtown Theatre or the Stand, or not getting to some of the Gilded Balloon Rose Theatre or Sweet Novotel or things like that, suggests to me that once again, the growth of the Fringe becomes a bit of a difficulty. Somebody said it's like a number of curated little festivals. So Underbelly are in charge of something, Pleasance in charge of something, and so on. So it's not really the unfettered madness that originally it was intended to be, except the very first day that I went to the Fringe, which I've not included in this kind of review, I went with members of staff from the company I work for. And we wandered round and we went to see nothing. And we were going to scope out whether or not we'd take young people to go and see anything. We took nobody. Not just because the kids didn't really want to go, but also because the choice and the variety of abilities, how good and how bad things are, is too difficult to contemplate for somebody who's not steeped in it. So I wonder what next year will bring. I will make 2 predictions. Prediction number 1 will be it'll be the biggest ever Fringe ever. And prediction number 2 is that it will still sell as many tickets as are sold at the 2020 Olympics because it keeps on matching that. So 2019, all done and dusted. And for Fringe Review, as the Scottish editor, I am now going to go off and I'm going to look at what is coming up in the next few months to go and see and review. It is now getting to autumn. And Panto is just around the corner. So there's a short period of time between the end of August and the beginning, mid-November, where things start to slow down for other forms of theatre. That we will see what Scottish theatre has to offer and to bring. And I will continue on a Sunday morning to update my vlog, looking at a variety of topics and things. And if you want to subscribe, the subscribe button is somewhere there. Do so, and I'll be able to keep you up to date. But until then, I'm off to have a chat with Paul Levy about his idea of a musical. I'm not quite sure if Fred and Rose Entertains is the title he was meaning to have.